All right, Scott, the Spurs. No one really expected them to be this good this quickly. I think people thought maybe playoff team this year, but as presently constructed right now, can this team win the title this year? Can this team win the 2026 NBA championship?
Now, this is the Spurs present a fascinating case because on one hand, they have absolutely the profile of a team that could win the championship. I think top 5 offense, top 5 defense, otherworldly super duper star that is like a defensive factor. And you've got some young guys and, a couple shooters there. I think, do I personally think I think they can win the championship, but I do think there are definitely like a couple areas that, I'm sure we'll get into that I think, they really need to improve on, or at least prove that they can accomplish once we get to that playoff level.
Yeah, I think the thing that, would work against them to the average fan is the experience, the age, and this team, the franchise hasn't made the playoffs since 2019, which is wild. You consider how consistent the Spurs were forever. And now, you're looking at a 7-year playoff drought, which is about to end. Most of their rotation, other than 3 guys, has never played a playoff game. You're looking at De'Aaron Fox, who's played one playoff series. Luke Cornett, who's obviously been in the playoffs, but not like a star player. And then Harrison Barnes, who's got the most playoff experience, did start for a championship team, but that was years ago. But historically, a team usually has to take some lumps in the playoffs, get some experience before all of a sudden arriving as a contender. Even last year's Thunder team, which was one of the youngest and least experienced playoff championship teams ever, had still made the second round just the year before.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the Pistons are another team that I think you kind of lop in there as sort of a young team that's looking to do that this year. So I think that's just always going to be we'll believe it when we see it. I think they also do rely on obviously you've got Wemby. Fox is a veteran in his own right. But then you've got a couple other very young guards that they asked to do an awful lot for them.
Yep.
To me, that's a big thing that I want to see what happens. But I've got a couple other things that I'm looking for in terms of potential, downsides to them. Number one is, and I want to see how he finishes out the season, but it'd be interesting to see how teams play Wemby in a 7-game series because as you've seen now, post All-Star break, he's getting beat up every game. We saw it in Toronto last week or a couple weeks ago, and his offensive numbers have been pretty bad. He's still game-changingly phenomenal on defense still, which is just like unbelievable. But those offensive numbers haven't been great. He had a good bounce-back game against the Knicks, but like the three-point shooting's been abysmal, which to me tells me, those legs are getting tired. He told Michael Grange he was tired from all the travel and the time zone. So I think in a 7-game series when teams really bogged down and they're watching tape and they're going after him every game, I'm curious to see the way that he would hold up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and we're going to get into that real quick. Let's talk about, you mentioned the profile of a team that usually would be a contender. So we can talk about that a little bit. So they're on a 59-win pace, second in the West, third overall. As you mentioned, top 5 on both ends of the court. They and Oklahoma City are the only 2 teams that have top 5 marks on both ends of the court, according to Cleaning the Glass, which filters out garbage time. If you go by the NBA.com stats, which doesn't filter out garbage time, the Spurs are actually the only team with top 5 marks on both ends of the court. They're 9-3 against the 5 best NBA teams that aren't including themselves. So they're the 3rd overall team. So like 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th. The Spurs are 9-3 against those teams. They got the 3rd best championship odds. They've also been the best team in the league for 3 months now. You go back to early December, no teams have been better than the Spurs. They've owned the Thunder during that time. So again, if you just didn't know anything about a team's age, playoff experience, and someone just gave you all those facts, you'd be like, well, that's an undeniable championship contender. So now let's talk about a little bit more about why, some of the stuff you mentioned with Wemby and why they might not be. The concern I have is that they don't have a championship-level shot creator. And maybe Wemby becomes that one day. We know what he can do on the defensive end, and we know overall he's an unbelievable player. Defensively, he's going to spook teams from even getting into the paint, getting close to the rim. The Spurs are going to win a lot of games in the playoffs just because of that defense. But you need a championship-level shot creator, and as good as De'Aaron Fox is, as good as Stephon Castle is, Dylan Harper could be one day. Devin Vassell, who I really like as an underrated player, I don't know, and I'm not convinced that any of those guys is ready to be the primary shot creator and shot maker on a team that wins the championship, and Wemby isn't there yet either. You mentioned like some of the inefficiencies with his offense still.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what we'll be looking for. Like I am very high, honestly, on that 3-guard trio of, Steph Castle, De'Aaron Fox, and Dylan Harper. And I think those guys create a lot of opportunities as it is. But when we get to the playoffs, like so much of this is just going to be like, you have to show me, Like when you get to the playoffs, like those are very young guys. The offense is going to slow down. They're going to have to create in the half court. And I honestly look to the other side of that as well, which is the shooting, which I think has long been a topic for them in terms of looking at like deficiencies. I think shooting's long been an issue. They have somewhat tempered that this season. Vassell is shooting over 40%. Harrison Barnes is shooting over 40%. Champagne's shooting over 40%. And Carter Bryant, I think, is hanging in around there 40% as well. But to me, it's like that extra step as well as when we get into the half court, slogging games in the playoffs, are those guys going to be there and be reliable? And that is honestly kind of goes hand in hand with the shot creation, where are we getting open enough looks for those guys? Are we all of a sudden asking Vassell to create open shots and make open shots? And then it's kind of those guys get overextended, which, I mean, this all ties together because it all ties back to the fact that if Wemby is effective offensively, that also changes a ton for this team. So it's weird to say that you look at a young team and you're like, when you get to the playoffs, it's the offense we're concerned about and not the defense. But I think that's just a matter of fact with this team.
I guess the last question, and this is more like Western Conference specific when you talk about their chances to even get to the finals. But so I mentioned how like they've owned OKC, right? Like no other team has this season. They're really the team that kind of showed the league like, that the Thunder are human. They're not some unbeatable force. They've got a winning record against Houston, against Denver, and against Minnesota, I believe. Those are the top 5 teams in the West. Yeah. But my question for you is, how much of that matters to you if you're, just as a fan, as an observer going into the playoffs and say predicting things, they match up with Oklahoma City just because they owned them in the regular season? Are you taking San Antonio over OKC? I think we're in agreement we're not, right?
Not
okay.
At this point.
Are you taking them over a healthy Denver in a 7-game series?
Okay, that's an interesting one because that's a healthy Denver is a massive caveat. Like they've been playing not if we're saying they get Aaron Gordon back, and they do have a couple other guys like Christian Brown and
Cam Johnson's back. But hasn't really.
Cam Johnson
himself,
is like if they're back but at a reduced level, I do actually like San Antonio in that series. But to your point of like, am I feeling great about it? No.
Right. So then it's like, okay, then even Houston, Houston's got their own offensive issues because they don't have Fred VanVleet, and like they're beating some bad teams recently. But that's one where I could see San Antonio winning.
Agreed.
But even like Minnesota,
that's a tough one.
That's a tough one. That's a team that's been there, done that the last couple of years, been to the last 2 conference finals. We know Ant is that, even though he hasn't won a championship, we know he is that championship level shot creator, great defense. That's another team where the Spurs are going to finish ahead of them in the standings. They'll probably win the season series. But then if you give me that same matchup in May instead of February in 7 games, I'm probably leaning Minnesota.
Totally. I mean, Ant had 55 against them in a game they lost. Like, to be fair, the Spurs won that game, but Ant had 55 against them in late January, I think. Yeah. That is a matchup too where I definitely like Minnesota. I mean, I'm just so excited to watch that, honestly. Like the thought of like being done with these March games and getting a chance to like really watch those guys lock in. But again, it's not like they're going to find, to your point, we're going to find them in a variety of series where you're either like, I like them a little bit, or it's tough to see them move on, which I do think I could be wrong. Like we could be in for like a very exciting playoff run if this team somehow turns it on. Yeah. But it does feel like for such an elite team, it does feel like they do have an awful lot to prove and an awful lot of hurdles to jump through if they're going to be successful.
Yeah, and to be fair, none of that's their fault.
No.
Like they, like Harper's a rookie. You mentioned Carter Bryant, who's like starting to nudge his way into the rotation. Yeah. I think he's got a great future. He's a rookie. Castle's second year, third year? Yeah. Wemby's third year. Like, it's not like we're talking about a team that needs to prove it to us because they've been there and failed. They've literally never been there before. So it's very possible, just like no one thought they were going to be a second-place team in the West and a third team overall, and OKC's boogeyman this year, and they've proven us wrong. It's very possible that we get to the playoffs and they remind us that they are the team they've been over the regular season. And I would love to see it because I think it would be good for the NBA for Wemby to go on that kind of run. And while we do need to see it, and probably they need to take a lump or two in the playoffs before getting to the mountaintop, if we're just going by what they have shown us from October through right now, March, everything about them screams championship contender.
Back to your point about Harrison Barnes doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of being a veteran. I have to say, they rolled through Toronto last week. We saw them play. I noticed Harrison Barnes, he's thinning a little bit in the back of his head, and I have to say that has totally thrown my life for a loop, you know? Harrison Barnes was like the small forward on that 72-10 Warriors
top
team.
prospect at one time.
Oh, man, yeah, 7th pick.
When we were like young adults.
Yes, you were like, oh, the Raptors could get him. That'd be exciting. And it's just like, I've really seen my whole mortality reflected all of a sudden in Harrison Barnes' career. So from another perspective, I'd love to see Harrison Barnes get a win.
Barnes was really huge for them when Wemby was out earlier in the year when
Yeah.
San Antonio went on the run. Another thing that kind of helps their championship bona fides, where it's like, this is a team that thrived without their superstar and is only playing better with him. So every challenge they've met this season, they have more than answered the bell. And so there's no reason for us to lack faith in them other than just history and NBA precedent telling us, no, they have to take a lump or two in the playoffs. But again, on paper, there is nothing that we can point to and say this isn't a championship level team.